I'll jump in with one question. I'd like to just sort of highlight through a couple questions some of the resources that are available, particularly in the schools. And I know, Becky, you had an experience with the Center for Student Success at Westboro High School, which is a transitional program for students who need to be out of school for a little while or a long while and have them transition back to school. So can you just share a little bit about your experience with that and how that resource was there for you?
Yeah, of course. I think that CSS, the Center for Student Success at Westboro High School, is such an incredible program that I think should be a standard at all schools in the country. So I first entered CSS. Mr. Anderson was actually the one who recommended that I go into it. I had just had a concussion, my third concussion, and I was out of school for an extended period of time. And I was still experiencing symptoms. And I felt this terrible pressure that I was falling behind in school and I wasn't ever going to be able to catch up and wasn't doing homework. It was not a great place to be in, especially involuntarily. So I ended up joining CSS, and what they were able to do for me was liaison with my teachers, kind of just updating and being like, hey, no, she wants to do the work, but she can't. And sometimes having an adult and a peer of your teachers advocate for you in that way, it can be completely game changing. So I was in there for a while because of my concussion. And once I was back to my full schedule and back on top of my academics, I ended up staying in there and continuing my therapy with Miss Glenn. And this actually prompted me to then find my own therapist. I had known that I should probably get one for a while. I ended up finding my first psychiatrist. And I think that this program, it gave me a space that I could go to if I wasn't feeling okay. Like throughout the day at school, if I just needed a minute to process, or if I was going to have a panic attack or something like that, I knew that there was a safe room in the corner of the school that not many people know about. I could go there and I know I'd be okay. And I think that among all of the different things that they offer to the students, I think that's probably the most important one, is just having that safe space within the school that you can escape to if you need to. But it was a great program that helped me get back into school academically and mentally. So yeah, CSS was definitely a great experience for me.
That's great, Becky, and I'll follow that up with another question, and I'll try to be a little vulnerable as a member of the Westboro High School faculty and ask either Connor or Krithi, if you had the opportunity to look at the structures or the climate or the culture of Westboro High School, what might you suggest that we work on to improve the opportunities for all of our students to feel safe and accepted, regardless of how they present or how they, what's going on in their life? And we're always looking for improvement on that. So I'd be curious to hear from you what thoughts you might have that you could share with us.
I guess I'll start just with some ideas off the top of my head. I think for me, my personal experience, one of the biggest game-changing moments that I had was when I was approached about what, at the time was called like sports psychology, but was really therapy. And I needed to be sort of coaxed in that way to take that step that I knew was the right step for me. I wasn't being forced into anything. I didn't feel like I was being corralled. I had meetings in the past where I did feel like I was being sort of cornered by a guidance counselor. I have this one image of this one room in the school by the principal's office that has no windows. I think it's orange. That's how I remember it in my nightmares. And I was being asked about suicidal ideations and certain comments that I had made to another student. And that experience felt too aggressive. I felt like I was being corralled, whereas being sort of coaxed lightly was better for me. But regardless, I think it's important that we introduce all the resources to students so they know and can sort of choose their own path. I was not personally familiar with, I actually just learned about CSS in this conversation. I wasn't familiar with the structure of Ms. Camille Glenn's office and the resources that were there. You know, they might have been introduced in one presentation at one time or another, and I might have missed it. But I think repeated reminders in an open conversation with everyone that those resources are accessible to everyone. And it's not just the room where like the weird or the messed up kids go, which is like how I was feeling about myself at the time. I think that's really important to sort of destigmatize it within our own conversations as a school and say like, this is a really cool resource if you're feeling a certain way. And even if you bring in alumni or students to say like, this is how I benefited from it, I think that, especially students who you think will sort of have an influence on others, I think that is a really effective way to just say, you know, empower people to feel like they have the control over sort of how they seek help. Because I didn't necessarily feel like I had that control because there was sort of an asymmetrical information challenge. So yeah, I don't know if that clarifies things, but I hope that's helpful.
That was great.
Super helpful.
I have to agree with Connor on that because I had a similar experience too, where I felt like I was being pressured into telling and to explaining my mental health, my mental illness problems. But and I also do remember feeling very ashamed every time I went to that part of the school, like as if I was like waiting there to talk to like a guidance counselor or something. I just remember it being like, oh, I don't want anyone to see me, and just like trying to hide my face. So I think we need to like rebrand that as not a place where like the messed up kids go or whatever that is. I think we need to like figure out some sort of way to make that a more a happier place, I guess. For as ironic as that sounds, like I think we need to figure out a way to make sure that certain children certain students can go to certain teachers and the teachers can refer them there. There needs to be some sort of system in place so it's much easier to, and I think that's probably already changing since I've been in high school. So there definitely is more of a system now, as you were explaining, and more resources. And the fact that we're even having this conversation means there's more normalization. So I really appreciate this talk.